Yo, this is James Lights Out Tony, the one and only. You are tuning into Philly Fight World. You see me? BAM!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another session of Philly Fight World. As you always know, there's fight analysis, there's fight news, but this is Philly Fight World with your host Blake Anthony and Sooly. And we got a guest on here today. It's a legend in the game. Many years, many of encounters, many of sharing stories, sharing emotions and things. And I don't want to spoil too much too early. I'm gonna give him a proper introduction because you'll have to when you are in the presence of a legend. You have to do legendary things. And the first thing I thought about when we talk about the passion of boxing, you're talking about loving the game, loving the sport, loving stories. This is the first thing that comes to my mind. And watch this clip before we bring our guest in.
Juan Manuel Marquez has, through the bulk of his career, been one of the great victims of the subjective cruelty of life. Early in his career, overshadowed for years by his Mexican countrymen Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales, both of whom were seen as more spectacular fighters, more fun to watch. So he changed his style in mid-career, took more risks, became a little bit more of a boxer-puncher, more of a banger, traded more. He got some unexpected knockdowns as a result from lesser fighters, but he kept biding his time and getting better. He's the smartest counterpuncher in boxing. He used it in 3 fights to bedevil Manny Pacquiao without ever getting a win. Yesterday he told us he would try harder for the knockout, and why shouldn't he? For the latter part of his career, he's, for the most time, been the number 3 fighter in the world in a sport in which the public recognized only 2, Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. After tonight, they'll recognize Juan Manuel Marquez. It was a thrilling victory for Marquez, regardless of which fighter you root for.
And that's none other than Jim Lampley himself with the emotions and everything. And it's okay to cry today if we cried.
That was an amazing night.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, who had at that point become a true veteran boxing fan, was one of a fair number of people in the MGM Grand Arena who, given the nature of the punch, the way Pacquiao went down, at first thought he might be dead. It was a spectacular detonating knockout by Marquez, who, by my lights, basically put his whole career into one punch, and made the statement that he wanted to make. And oh, by the way, I was with Manny Pacquiao last week at the International Boxing Hall of Fame induction ceremony in Canastota, New York. And of course, the subject came up. And he said, look, when a man is better on any given night, you just have to be able to say he was the better man. That night, Marquez was definitely the better man. And it was when you put the great attacker in against the great counterpuncher, somebody's going to have the last word. And by my lights, it's usually the great counterpuncher.
Definitely. It's like all the stories that you have, and it's just I know you could go on forever, man. The thing I love the most about you in your career was the passion that you have. And I think today lacks that kind of passion. We'll get into that further on as we talk. And I'm glad that you're getting back on there as you were on with Antonio Tarver, watching the fight, talking about that stuff like that. And I think you bring back the heart and soul of boxing. That's in my opinion. I don't know what Sooly feels, if you feel the same way. I feel like you kind of
no doubt, definitely, man. It was great hearing the team brought back together last month, but for telecast up in New York, man, I just hope it continues. Because it just, like you said, Blake, it just brought back that feeling that I think boxing has been missing since HBO left boxing. So great to have you here. Great to hear your voice. Hey, it's a pleasure.
Can I call you Sooly?
Definitely. That's what my friends call me. So of course, you're a friend now.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel like we're friends. And Blake, thank you very much for the introduction and having me here. It was good to be back on a microphone in Times Square. We all wish that the fights had been more entertaining than they were. We learned something from it, I hope, going forward. But one thing I learned was that I definitely can work with Mike Coppinger and particularly with Antonio Tarver. And you guys mentioned passion. Passion is a meaningful element in whether you're going to be able to interpret and call fights for an audience, which brings its own passions to the event. And I thought Tarver was particularly good at expressing what he feels about what he's seeing in a way that is not overly colorful or overly demonstrative, but straight from the heart. He's a straight up guy, always has been, and I really loved working with him and with Mike Coppinger as well.
Yeah, it was fun listening to you two talking too. I think at one point you added some commentary. You was like, Antonio Tarver is timing how long it takes to throw a punch in this fight. If I quoted that correctly.
Well, you got to call him as you see him. I mean, some nights, some matchups, sometimes the fighters do not ignite. And we had what appeared to be that night 2 or 3 instances of counterpuncher looking at counterpuncher. And when you make that mistake in matchmaking, if that's exactly what happened, I leave it to them, the promoters and matchmakers of the event, to determine. But we had some moments that night where guys were just staring at each other. And that's what happens when counterpunchers face counterpunchers, because they have to have a cue. They have to have something to play off of, or else they're not ready to ignite. And there was a lot of waiting that night.
Yeah, definitely about that. Me and Sully have talked about that a lot of the night. We thought out of all of that, the people that stole the show the other night were obviously Rolly Romero and Garcia, and then Teofimo.
Yep.
Yeah, Teofimo.
I think Teofimo came closer than other people on the card to trying to do what he was supposed to do. What Ryan Garcia was smoking against Rolly Romero, I don't know. I'm not responsible for that. I was just very disappointed that was not the Ryan Garcia who had detonated Devin Haney at the Barclays Center 1 year prior to that. So I'm sure that Ryan is disappointed that somehow or another he didn't show up. And we'll see what happens the next time.
We could tell definitely he wasn't smoking ostrich or whatever it was he had in his system last time, because that surely wasn't in the pipe. But yeah, Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, it's just so much to talk about that night. Like, we've had multiple guests on here. We just had Blair Cobbs on here, and we were talking about how they were already promoting the Garcia Haney rematch, and I said, you didn't even get through Rolly yet. And I said several times before the fight even happened, I said, that's me. That's disrespectful. I said that you're going to already talk about a rematch with somebody else, and you didn't even face me yet. It's like, I'm just a placeholder at this point. I'm just a figurehead. I mean, how did you feel about all that? You were there obviously and saw all that.
Fight this fight first. Don't begin talking about the next fight until the next fight is made and on the schedule, and you know that you're going to do it. Because anything you say about this fight that is more in line with what you think is going to happen in the next fight, you're insulting your opponent. You have to be respectful enough of the opponent to talk about him and not what you're going to get to by stepping over him. And Romero took great delight in making certain that Ryan Garcia was not moving forward toward a Devin Haney rematch.
Definitely that. Rolly obviously had stuff on his social media, had stuff to say about all of that coming up to the fight, being put in a position of disadvantage and everything for that, because he obviously wasn't in the plans for that. It was planned for him to lose, obviously.
I'm not a big fan of social media. I'm not a big fan of social media because some of these fighters seem to think that they're going to fight the fight on social media.
They think so.
Into the ring and everything is going to be all set up for them. That's not the way the world works. Blow your own horn after the fight. Blow your own horn after you've demonstrated what you can do. Do you think that guys like Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns and Vladimir Klitschko and various others would have succumbed to the notion that, I mean, hey, Tyson Fury did a TV reality show on one of the streamers. The instant you have fallen prey to the idea that there's some reality in a TV reality show, you're deluding yourself, and you're making a mockery of yourself. And, you know, Fury showed up ill-equipped for the next fight after the reality show project. I hope he doesn't do that kind of foolishness again. I hope Ryan Garcia will quit bragging about all the dope he's smoking and all the booze he's hitting on his social media and prepare for the next fight in a better way.
I mean, they say there's. Go ahead, Sully.
Definitely being professional about your craft, and that's what you have to be. Like you, Jim, I'm not a big social media person, and me and Blake talked about that a lot.
He's not. That's what he's got me for.
That's what I got Blake for.
That's what he's got me for.
I mean, and look, you know, I wrote a book. and I had to publicize the book. The book is called It Happened. It's my autobiography. I'm sure you guys know about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, got involved with the publisher, went through the enterprise of writing the book. And the next thing that came up was, okay, now you have to develop a social media presence. Wait a minute. I mean, I wrote the book. Wasn't that what I was supposed to do? No. Now you have to go on social media and
not enough, Jim.
So I listened. I've paid attention. My wife is my social media producer. She does a spectacular job of steering me in the right direction. She was the one who came up with the idea. Okay, now you've got this page, the Jim Lampley or the real Jim Lampley, whatever it is. Why don't you go back to doing the most popular feature from your TV show, The Fight Game, on HBO, which was the Gaddy List. And now I'm putting the Gaddy List back together. I think I have 3 fighters already on the new Gaddy List. I'm conjuring which others will belong there. I don't know. You guys tell me. Is Bam Rodriguez a Gaddy List fighter? I think maybe Bam Rodriguez is a serious candidate to be a Gaddy List fighter. And he might be next. But I put Artur Beterbiev on there. And the first 2 were obvious, but I don't remember exactly right now. But at any rate, you can find the Gaddy List now at The Real Jim Lampley or JimLampley.com. I don't know, whatever it is.
We'll make sure we put it on the caps, you know, down below.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Oh man, I'll take care of you. We're gonna make this look pretty. And you know, you were silly. Like you said, you old school guys. You talking about you know, social media and things like that. So it's funny that you made me think of something. The boxers say there's 2. They used to say there's 2 fights that you have before a fight. One is on the scale and one is on the ring. Now with this new age, it's obviously one is on the scale, one is in the ring, and one is on social media. Yeah. It looks like it's moved up to 3. So
the world in which we live, you know, I may not be able to beat you in the ring, but I can out-talk you on social media.
You go.
But on we go. That's and people are making a lot of money off of it. I don't really understand how. But it's, you know, it's fine with me that the world moves on to a certain degree without me. It's just when it messes up politics and society, and I don't even want to get into that. But you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and that's a bigger problem.
Definitely. I know you just talked about your book that you have out now. And me and Blake was talking earlier, and I made sure I definitely got the audio of the book because of course, your voice, everyone knows your voice. Everyone knows your voice. Right? Yeah. And everyone knows your voice. So I wanted to listen to the audio of the book. And so the one thing that I enjoyed listening to you was about your former host, Big George Foreman, and friend, I should add. Blake is a big George Foreman.
Did my voice crack?
Yeah.
You were alive at the time I recorded it. I could never, ever in my wildest dreams have imagined that George would suddenly die 2 weeks before the publication of the book. The title comes from my call of his win over Michael Moore. The prologue, the first thing you read in the book, is about the 19-year-old me watching the 19-year-old him win his Olympic gold medal in Mexico City. There are various other ways in which he shows up in the book. When he became our expert commentator on HBO, he became a kind of personal and spiritual advisor to me because he was so wise and so balanced and so mature about his life, particularly as he got further along in age and dispensed with certain petty rivalries that he had fallen prey to through his career. And eventually his mind got larger, his brain got more aware, and he put all that aside. I loved him. He was a brilliant man. And people think that George was just a big, heavy, hard-hitting slugger who won his fights with his enormous punching power. That's true to some degree,
Yes.
but there was a lot more to it than that. He was a power punching scientist. Nobody, not even Sonny Liston, ever understood more about the weight shift, the timing, the angle of the punch when you throw it than George did. He had worked all that out in his mind, and there were a lot of things that that displayed his enormous wisdom. And he, a lot of people don't know that, and he told me this, that after his career was over, there were 5 living former heavyweight champions: Holmes, Ali, Norton, George, Frazier. And business people, entrepreneurs, would put them together for promotional events and bring them all together. And George and Holmes, neither of whom were in love with Ali, but both of whom understood what legitimate respect was. George and Holmes made a pact between themselves that one of them would always be positioned between Ali and Frazier when they were at these events, so that Joe could never fall prey to his worst instincts and do something that might be in the back of his mind and bring disrespect to them as a group. They knew that it was important to avoid that. So Holmes and Foreman, George told me, made a pact so that they always had one of them positioned between Frazier and Ali. Brilliant, thoughtful, loving, respectful, kind. All those words apply to George.
Definitely. And Sully, you know, we were talking about it. He knows I was a huge Foreman fan. Well, first and foremost, Tyson was always my favorite fighter, but Foreman, he's a strong 1A, 1B. And the reason I fell in love with George is because of the story that George has. And I think that's a lost art in boxing, that all people care about now are the O record, 15-0, 27-0. And it's not the stories anymore that people talk about that you fell in love with these fighters. George Foreman got played by Muhammad Ali and lost that fight. Lost himself, stepped away from boxing, came back, became a champion in his 40s twice. Took Holyfield to the distance in Holyfield's prime years. I remember in that fight, Holyfield asked did his teeth get knocked out when he got hit by Foreman in the end of the early rounds, because Foreman just like hitting it with a ton of bricks. And I fell in love with that story in boxing. So, like, when you talk about, like I said, with George, I think we got into this to try to talk about these stories that people can understand better about what these people go through and the things that they happen, because they're not just people who get in the ring and just hit each other in the head. There's more to these stories than what you see. Mike Tyson
was one of the, if you knew him, if you really got to know him, and I had that good fortune early in my career, one of the sweetest, nicest, most sympathetic people I ever met. Cared about everybody, cared about personal feelings, wanted to make an impression as a good guy. The one-man show was brilliant, because the one-man show was, you know, my wife says my website is The Real Jim Lampley. The one-man show was the real Mike Tyson. and he showed us everything about his interior world and how much he cared about being sweet, nice, considerate of other people.
There you go.
Absolutely. And I don't think that story has always been portrayed about Tyson. He was such a
people wanted to see him as this avenging destroyer, you know,
villain.
taking out his resentments for the disadvantages of his early life on lesser people who couldn't hit as hard as he did. There might have been some of that in there in the chemical mix, but a lot more of it was Mike wanted to be great because he wanted to be great and because he had seen people who were great. He had worked with Customato. He had been in a training situation, sharing nights watching fight films and sparring with Lennox Lewis when he was 14 years old.
Yeah.
Long before they met in Memphis. He knew everything about what it was going to be like for him to go back into the ring with Lennox Lewis. And I think he wished that other people understood it just as well as he did. But life is what it is. And Mike was from the very first moment I met him, a wonderful, sweet, gentle, loving, kind person who was capable of being your best friend, or if you crossed him, your worst enemy.
A boxing encyclopedia. He's one of the people that, I mean, you could give him a name, he'll run down the name of the fighter, when it happened, where it happened. He was just, people like him is just like, I mean, they're one of a kinds when it comes to
talking about
boxing. Yes, definitely.
Mike?
Definitely Mike Tyson. Yeah.
He was in fact an encyclopedia. And he was an encyclopedia out of respect, out of his admiration and respect for all the people who had come before him in boxing. He recognized better than anybody that there were many styles. There are many ways to succeed as a boxer. And, you know, the public did Mike a disservice by creating this indestructible Godzilla image and ignoring reality. Reality, I've pointed out many times, and I do this not to denigrate Mike or to diminish him, but to show you who he was and how well he understood the world. But going into the Douglas fight, in the preceding year or so, he had gone the distance with Tony Tucker. He had gone the distance with Mitch Blood Green. He'd gone to the last 10 seconds with Jose Ribalta. He had gone the distance with a couple of others, Mitch Blood Green, I mentioned. These were not lights out killer people. These were people who, because of their size, their length, because of a couple of technical issues here and there, et cetera, might not be people he could knock out. Mike understood that better than anybody. The audience went on seeking to believe that he knocked out everybody, but nobody knocks out everybody.
It's an easy story to sell.
Mike knew that very, very well. James Quick Tillis went all 10 rounds with Tillis. There were scorers at ringside who had Tillis winning the fight. People ignored it. They tossed it off. They discounted it. None of those things really happened. He's going to destroy Douglas. Oh, really? Well, you know, I can't give myself credit for being the one who said there's no way that Buster Douglas should be a 36-1 or 42-1 favorite over Mike Tyson. But I will give myself credit that by the time of the 6th or 7th round in Tokyo, I was saying to myself, why didn't you see this coming? He went the distance with Mitch Blood Green, who was a very average fighter. He went the distance with Tony Tucker. He went the distance with James Quick Tillis. He went to the last 10 seconds with Jose Ribalta. All those guys were taller than Mike, longer than Mike, and had a right hand that if they chose, they could bring over the top where he might not be able to see it. Douglas was the best of the group, okay? He was a former college basketball player. He had really good feet for a boxer. He was 6'4" and 235 pounds, much bigger than Mike. Douglas was, if you paid only attention to the technical elements and the size differential in the matchup, you might have said, oh, it's Tyson who should be the 42-1 underdog. But of course, that wasn't possible because Mike was Godzilla and Buster was just some clunk from Ohio who was going to fight him.
Yeah,
Definitely. And like you said, style style-wise, he was a perfect matchup to beat Mike. And like you said, those fights that you named earlier, you could see it coming. Someone had to be tall, length, and like you said, could throw that overhand right.
Good
And
feet.
it was just a
And Douglas
good
had the
feet.
best feet of all of them. Yes.
Definitely.
I mean, again, I can't give myself credit for it. I went into the fight thinking it was the same thing that everybody else thought. But by 5-6 rounds in, you can't deny what you're looking at.
Definitely. And we get those fights, we get those fights where I think the media kind of hypes it up, and we get caught up in it ourselves about a great fighter, but we sometimes don't look at the other guy. Of course, when you talk about Rolly, more recently Rolly and Garcia, and when you look at the other guy and the circumstances, you're not that surprised. You're not that surprised when we get the results that we do.
I saw
Going back to
those big bulging muscles in Rolly Romero's back when he went into the ring against Garcia. And I'm looking at him from behind, from my side of the ring. And immediately I thought, oh, he's not here to attack. He's here to defend. He is here to wear Ryan Garcia down and ultimately undress him with defensive skill and that big, strong body he has now put together. And that's what happened in the fight. And it was a brilliant choice on Romero's part, because everybody expected him to be the frenetic attacker that he had seemed to be in some of his previous fights. But he had a really good plan for diffusing the bomb that Garcia had looked to be in some previous fights, and he did it brilliantly.
Yeah, definitely that. I can't remember who he was talking to, Sooly, but we talk about let's talk about science in boxing a little bit. We're talking about the way some people fill out at one weight than another person did. You mentioned how his back looked. People said that Rolly fit that weight better than Garcia did. They said Garcia looked sloppy. They said Rolly looked like he filled it correctly. That's the best word I think he said his body filled that better than Garcia did at that weight.
I thought so. And I'm not a physical trainer. I don't always have the most educated perspective on that. But that night, as soon as he got into the ring and I looked at his back, I said, he's here to defend. And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. And we spoke so for young fighter out of Canada. He's signed with Mayweather. His name is Joseph Brown. He's a good friend of ours. He trained with Rolly that fight. And
really?
Yeah. And he basically he played the role of Garcia. And he basically said, we knew where we was going in. We was going to take away that hook. And the whole camp, he said, was defend. You know what I mean? That was the thing. Defend.
What I saw against Taney the year before would have said to me, you can never take that hook away. Look at how quick the ignition is. Look at what a rocket that hook is. But whatever it is in the ring that you think there's no antidote for it, there's an antidote somewhere. Somewhere, somebody's working on something that will diffuse it, regardless of what it is. When Ali Cassius Clay fought Sonny Liston the first time, wasn't supposed to have any chance whatsoever. They got into the ring. I was there. It was the first live prize fight I ever attended. By about 4 or 5 rounds in, you could see, it's Liston who doesn't have a chance. A, he can't find him. And B, even if he does, he won't be able to do anything with him because he just can't ignite quick enough to catch this guy who can get in, get out. And by the way, getting in and getting out, what does Terrence Crawford have to do to beat Canelo Alvarez?
Okay, I like how you segued into that. I like that, Jim.
Gary Leonard do to get an official decision against Marvelous Marvin Hagler? You get in, you get out. Get in, do damage, get out. And keep doing it over and over. It's an exhausting way to fight. You've got to have the conditioning to do it. But if Terrence has the right conditioning, and he has never been under conditioned, he's always been in great shape. If Terrence has the right condition and can get in and get out, oh, heck yes, he has a chance to beat Canelo Alvarez.
Mm.
So by that statement, you don't believe jumping up 2 weight classes is too much for Crawford if he follows that game plan you said?
I don't think Crawford should be looking for a knockout. I think Crawford should be thinking decision, the same way Leonard was against Hagler. Win rounds and walk away. That's the right way. Yeah, he knocked out Errol Spence. He owned Errol Spence.
Owned it.
That was clear from the moment that they got into the ring. Terrence has owned a lot of opponents, and a lot of that is his mental toughness, his mental outlook. You spend 3 or 4 rounds in the ring with Terrence, and you realize, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to beat this guy because he's so confident in what he does, and he's here to get it done. So you know, the person who first pointed it out to me, I said to Larry Merchant, does Terrence Crawford have a chance to beat Canelo Alvarez? And Larry said, Jim, let me answer a question with a question. Did Ray Leonard get an official decision against Marvelous Marvin Hagler? Yes, he did. He said, well, then there's your answer. Terrence has a chance to beat Canelo Alvarez. Now, he's not going to knock him out. He's got to realize Alvarez has the best punch resistance in the sport. We call it chin. I believe it's about his legs. It's about the 2.5 hours of hunter-jumper horseback riding every morning before he goes to the boxing gym for a 3.5 hour workout in the afternoon. Canelo has never, ever really been knocked down. There is one official knockdown in his career. Jose Cotto caught him on the chest, on the upper chest, knocked him off balance. He went back into the ropes, came off the ropes, stumbling in such a way that the referee ruled technically that the ropes had kept him up. He's never been on the canvas. That was the only official knockdown of his career. If Terrence goes in thinking that he's going to be able to knock Canelo Alvarez down, that's a deficit. I don't think he should even be considering that. What he should be considering is what Larry Merchant said. Get in, land a flurry, get out. Get in, land a flurry, get out. Frustrate Canelo with your greater quickness. That's how he can win.
I agree 100%. I'm a big Marvin Hagler fan, so I think Marvin won that fight against Sugar Ray. but
as all Marvin Hagler fans believe, yeah. I mean, look, you know, the boxing is rife with decisions like that, and it is a subjectively judged sport. And I cannot push back hard against anybody who says that Hagler won the fight, because I understand that way of thinking. It's the number one. I call them elevator fights. You know, you get on an elevator with 7 people. Somebody recognizes who you are. Oh, this is the guy who called the fights on HBO. This is Jim Lampley. And the next line is, who won Hagler Leonard? It's the absolute number one elevator fight, because there are so many of us out there who believe that Marvin got jobbed by a more glamorous fighter who had a more glamorous resume at that moment and had won an Olympic gold medal and had that name and was a major public figure. But, you know, at the end of the day, they're friends, just like so many other great opponents from great fights wind up being friends. And if they ever go to dinner, I'm pretty sure that Ray says, you know, I won the fight. And Marvin says, no, I won the fight. And they get along fine without that, you know? Yeah,
but I agree, though, 100% that, you know, when you give your ways of beating Canelo, just like Leonard did, he gave you the illusion that he won it, because basically he controlled that fight by doing just what you said. Coming in, flurrying, getting out. And in a way, that's controlling the fight. That's controlling the narrative.
And finishing the rounds. Remember, the last 20 seconds of every round were a showbiz festival for Ray. And the bell would sound and he would throw his fists up into the air as he walked to the corner. And judges are human beings. Okay. And you can never lose sight of the fact that judges are human beings just like us. They see a guy smiling, showing confidence, throwing his fists in the air at the end of a flurry. They might give him a round that was close enough to go the other way. And it only takes one or two in a fight of that nature to wind up with the win.
There you go. There you go. Perfectly said. And I agree with you 100% on that one. 100%.
I know you had to get your Hagler question in there. I knew you was going to do
Yeah,
it.
I had to, man.
I gave him respect, okay?
You did.
Like we cool here, all right?
They said we cool.
We did. Well, yeah. I'm a big Hagler. Hagler and Ali. Those are my two guys right there. Going back. Hagler and Ali.
Two very different people.
Mm.
Two very different people.
Mm-hmm.
Marvin was not an attention seeker and was capable of slipping into the woodwork of what any room he was in. Wonderful, dignified human being, nice man, great fighter. Ali, the king. You know, there's never been a more attention-getting human being than Ali, and he deserved it. He got attention because he deserved it, because he was showing the world a different way to be. Okay, you know, you're discomfited by the fact that I'm a Muslim. Live with it. Enjoy the fact that I am a Muslim. You're discomfited with the fact that I don't like racism and I'm going to push back against it. Live with it. Enjoy it, because I'm going to belittle racism and make it less important than me. And he did all those things. And those were the things that made him my boyhood hero. One of the best things I did in New York when I came back to ringside that Friday night in New York, May 3, probably the best thing I did on that telecast was in the first fight, I spotted across the ring the former Sports Illustrated photographer, now freelance photographer, Neil Leifer, arguably the greatest sports photographer of all time. And I remembered off the top of my head that upcoming very soon was the 60th anniversary of Neil's famous photograph of Ali standing over Liston in Lewiston, Maine, with his fist cocked in that defiant position, and Liston sprawled on the canvas between his legs. And if you look carefully between the legs, if you can get a really legible version of the photo in the front, right next to ringside, there's a famous photographer, Associated Press photographer, whose name I believe is Dave Berg. And then 2 or 3 press rows behind Dave Berg, standing up at his table with his mouth dropped in a signature open mouth expression, is the very young Larry Merchant. The young, very happy, very sort of stylish young Larry Merchant, standing up in his chair with his jaw dropped and his eyes wide open in amazement. Those are the 3 major elements of the photograph. And I said, coming up is the 60th anniversary of perhaps the most famous photograph in the history of boxing. Indeed, maybe the most famous sports action photograph ever. Ali standing over Liston with his fist cocked. And now, if you look across the canvas here in Times Square, there on the other side of the canvas from us is Neil Leifer, 60 years later, still pursuing his craft, still wrestling with the lenses and all the equipment in the bag, still trying to get the best photograph possible for fans and followers, most of whom could never say his name. But what a vital and meaningful institution he has been. And I was so proud walking away from that telecast that I had pushed a button and said to the producer, look across the ring from us. That's Neil Leifer. You've got to get a shot of him so I can establish that the 60th anniversary of Ali Liston 2 is coming up. And oh, by the way, it wasn't a phantom punch. He hit him cleanly with a straight right hand.
There you go. Great story. That's a great story, man.
Like I said, that's what said we love these hearing these stories and piecing boxing together, and we try to piece getting boxing back to what it was, the greatness of boxing. Because for a minute there, I know you saw it, MMA and UFC was kind of dominant for a minute. And now boxing is kind of taking over. You got Dana White coming in and doing promotions of Canelo. We didn't ask you that. Canelo Crawford. I mean, what is your thoughts on that?
I have no thoughts on anything relative to the promotion of the event, other than that I hope my friend Turki Al-Sheikh is directly involved because I think he's doing a lot of great things for boxing. Dana works with my former agent, Dick Khan. I have to wish both of them well. I wish Dana well in his migration into boxing. Obviously, he has been massively successful on behalf of mixed martial arts and its rise to prominence in the society. All credit and congratulations to Dana White. I will unabashedly tell you that I hope that I am chosen to do the blow-by-blow for Canelo versus Crawford, but I don't control that. I've done many of Canelo's fights and many of Crawford's fights. I think I have very positive relationships with both fighters. I think it would make sense for me to call the fights, but there are other blow-by-blow men. There are other boxing television show hosts. I respect and admire them all. I lay no claim to sovereignty with regard to that kind of thing. I just hope it's a great fight and that both fighters are honored for and by what they do.
Nah, Jim, we gonna push your name, man. We need you there, bro.
I like you said.
Don't be modest. No,
I'm not a self-promoter. And I have never been a self-promoter, and I won't be a self-promoter.
Hey, you don't have to. We'll push it. We'll hey, man. Put it into existence. Just put it into existence. We're gonna push it, and because we need it. We listen. This is what me and Blake talk about. We miss.
We need an announcer with a Kronk hat there.
Somebody
who is honoring my best friend ever in life, the great Emmanuel Stewart, with the Kronk hat. Emmanuel was the most soulful man I ever knew. I miss him to this very day. The number of nights that we whiled away talking about Motown lyrics. I could go on and on and on. He was a great, great man.
You worked beside some great personalities in boxing, and you spoke on George Foreman.
George Foreman, Emmanuel Stewart, Roy Jones. I mean, just on the basis of those three alone, you're at three different points on the graph, and every one of them was a majorly big time expert commentator presence. And oh, by the way, I started out with Ray Leonard. I'm with Ray Leonard in Tokyo calling Tyson versus Buster Douglas. And oh, by the way, when I first started calling fights on ABC, I was with a stylish kind of preppy Greenwich, Connecticut boy named Alex Wallow, who knew as much about boxing as anybody in the world and taught me so many things that I still employ in my boxing calls to this day, that I can never give him enough credit for schooling me and giving me my indoctrination into boxing broadcasting. So Alex Wallow, Ray Leonard, all the people I worked with at HBO, now Tarver, shoulder to shoulder in Times Square. I've been a very, very lucky man.
So we're trying to get Tarver on to talk about all that too. We're trying to get all of them. I know he's a busy man. If you got a leg up for us, talk. We want to talk to Tarver too. We love to get him on there, hear his perspective on boxing. But yeah, those are, like I said, those are just. It's great to have you back in the fold of everything. I don't know if you mentioned it. Are you going to be at that Pacquiao fight coming up?
At the Pacquiao fight?
Yeah, in Vegas next month.
I will be there.
I have no business relationship that suggests that I would be at the Pacquiao fight. I have a love relationship with Manny. I first met Manny more than 21 years ago when he showed up at a fighter meeting in Las Vegas prior to his appearance against Legionola Ledwaba on a top-ranked pay-per-view undercard. Ledwaba had shown Larry and me in South Africa on the undercard of Louis Rockman that he was probably the best 122-pound fighter in the world. The day before the fight, we met this ragamuffin from the streets of General Santos City in the Philippines who had been brought in as the opponent for Ledwaba. And the following night, we watched him basically wipe the ring with Ledwaba and demonstrate what a prodigious talent he was going to turn out to be. That Manny Pacquiao, and I liked him from the beginning, that Manny Pacquiao could barely put together 3 or 4 words of English in our fighter meeting. He was struggling to make his first appearance in American society. Last week at the International Boxing Hall of Fame induction ceremony, the same Manny Pacquiao stood up at the primary microphone on the dais to speak about his induction into the Boxing Hall of Fame and delivered a 15-minute speech in English, no notes, perfect, on point in every possible way. And it was, to me, because of my personal experience, just stunning, just an amazing thing to watch. And I greeted him afterward in the restroom. I admit I followed him in the restroom because I needed to talk to him.
It's okay. It's all right.
And I described to him what I just said to you. I said, I met you 24 years ago before the Ledwaba fight. And I thought you were just an opponent who was going to be wiped up, and you did what you did. And I want to say to you, Manny, that what I saw tonight represents such a dramatic long-term transformation of your personality and your character that I'm 100% certain, although politics had something to do with it, running for the presidency in the Philippines certainly had something to do with it. But there's no other sport, only boxing, could have produced that kind of personal transformation. I've always said only boxing could produce a Muhammad Ali. Now there are 2. Only boxing could produce a Manny Pacquiao.
Absolutely.
An astonishing human being, really.
And it's funny that you talk about that with people that need to be in the sport of boxing. Bring it up again. Blair mentioned all of those. Muhammad Ali's, Manny Pacquiao's, Canelo Alvarez. Those you need, like Terrence Crawford. Like you need all those guys in the boxing to bring it back where it needs to be. And like you said, boxing just brings so enormous stories that makes you love the game. And I just want to ask you, Jim, like, tell like people that may not know, why do you get so emotional when you talk about these fighters? Why do you get so emotional? Why is it?
I get emotional because it's a personal sport. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is not a 47-player roster. This is not even an 18 person roster. This is a 1-person roster in each corner with their trainers and cut men and what have you. Stop it. Okay. What is it? 310. Go away, Hollywood.
They're trying to do a movie, Jim.
Yeah, maybe with me. But at any rate, I get emotional because every boxing match is a snowflake in 2 personal stories that ultimately compile a full front yard of snow. Every boxing match is part of 2 ongoing and now interlocking biographies that are so soulful, so unusual. I hate the word unique. It's vastly overused. But again, what I said to Pacquiao that night, only boxing could have produced this transformation. I think boxing is unique as a personal vehicle for personality change, learning about life. I mean, Mike Tyson, what a spectacular example. The fact that I walked into Mike Tyson's dressing room in Memphis after Lennox knocked him out in 8th round, I believe. And I walked in and he was petting a naked baby on his lap. And I later learned that the baby was named D'Amato and was his most recently born son. And he heard me come in the door. And he didn't even look up. He didn't have to look up to know it was me. And I had not been with him in years because he spent all those years on Showtime. He spent all those years away from us, et cetera, et cetera. And now here I am walking in after all those years and stepping into the room with him. And before I ever said a word, he, without looking up, he said, "I've missed you." And that was so touching to me. That was striking. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't say, hey, Mike, it's Jim Lampley, etc. I walked in. He didn't look up and he said, I've missed you. And I realized in that moment he was saying, I missed the person I was back in the HBO days. I missed being the legitimate heavyweight champion of the world. I missed not having to deal with all these delineations about which fights, et cetera, et cetera. I missed the unadulterated praise that I was achieving during that period of time. I missed me before I fell into the trap of Robin Gibbons. All those things were a part of what he was saying when he said, I've missed you. And I couldn't respond in any way other than to say, I've missed you too. I love you, and I'm thrilled that I was here with you. And then he looked up at me and said, in a kind of a wistful way, what exactly did people expect? He's 6'5" or maybe 6'6". I'm 5'10". What I learned tonight, I've known since I was 14 years old. And we trained together in Canastota when Arnie Bem, his amateur boxing coach, brought him down to spend a week with me watching boxing films on the wall. I've always known. And that was fabulous. It's such an important piece of self-knowledge and such a statement on what makes Mike great, what makes him a genuinely great and beautiful human being, that he could admit that he knew going into a fight that Bobby Ches picked him to win on the air. A lot of people picked him to win. I remember I told Skip Bayless one night in a Jim Rome studio that Lennox was going to beat Mike, and he said, you're crazy. You don't even know anything about the sport that you're calling, et cetera, et cetera. It was amazing how many people were deluded into believing that Tokyo hadn't happened, that all those other things I mentioned earlier happened to happen. But Mike knew they'd happen. Mike was never at a loss to understand exactly who he was. And that's, to me, a part of the continuing beauty of my great and beloved friend, Mike Tyson.
Great story. Great story, man.
Great story.
Yeah, heck yeah. Hey, we missed you too, Jim. I mean, just like Mike said, we missed you, man. And
the game missed you.
Hey, life goes on.
Life
goes on, but who knows? We'll see. Maybe I'm back. I was back for one night. I called those
back,
nights,
and you back. You back.
I hope it happens again.
We hope so too. We hope so.
You back. It needs you. It needs the fresh breath of air. It needs you.
Needs
Definitely.
me crying on camera.
It's okay.
Needs me getting all wrapped up in my own emotions. No, I don't think we desperately need that, but I got away with it.
No.
Fans appreciate it. They do.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely did. I mean, if you don't know, if just boxing fans themselves, casual boxing fans, if they don't know your face, they definitely know your voice. And there's not too many storytellers in boxing. I mean, you're the best storyteller in boxing that there's been.
Hands down.
And me and Blake, we talk about that a lot. And that's one of the things that the sport needs. It needs that storytelling. These fighters, they need it. Not the sport needs it, of course, but these fighters need it.
Well, when
they
I go
need
to see the
someone.
fighters, I used to live around the corner from Canelo Alvarez in Del Mar, California. I would bump into his senior trainer, Chepo, at the grocery store. I would pause Chepo in the grocery store as he was headed toward the checkout line. I would look into the basket. Okay, he's eating tuna? Yes, he's eating tuna. And that's chicken. And those are the vegetables for tonight. And I said, okay, thank you, Chepo. I appreciate that. So I had inside knowledge about Canelo. Every once in a while, I would go and watch him through a fence, training on some beautiful horse at the horseback riding terminal down the hill from my house. So I knew all about, the 2.5 hours of hunter jumper training in the morning before the 3.5 hours of boxing training in the afternoon. Canelo, how do you do that? Well, I can do that because the boxing training is almost all upper body and the horseback riding is all lower body. And when you watch him take a punch from Berlanga or some other big puncher and stand up straight without ever being in any kind of jeopardy, that's the legs. I believe that. Other people say the chin, and his chin is certainly really good, but the legs are what keep him upright. And again, never been knocked down. He was charged with an official knockdown. It wasn't really a knockdown as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
I'm sure Terrence knows that. I'm sure Terrence knows that this is not going to be the same as Errol Spence. This is something else. And by the way, no flies on Errol Spence. Good fighter, great trainer, Derek James, but Terrence had him. Terrence had him from the beginning.
Yeah.
Who's your favorites today? I mean, we got a lot of young fighters today that's coming up. Is there anyone or any fighters that you really enjoy watching?
Well, you said favorite. Terrence. Canelo. I can't believe they're going to fight each other. That's surprising.
We're talking about legendary. That's a legendary fight right there.
Bivol, take either one of them. They're both Gaddy list type fighters, particularly Beterbiev, who's a go forward attacker, and Bivol, of course, is a great aggressive counterpuncher. I call Canelo an aggressive counterpuncher, meaning he can lead or he can follow, but he's probably more comfortable playing off of what you do. Terrence can do either. He can lead or he can follow. He's going to have to be, I think, the aggressor against Canelo Alvarez. And again, to make the point we made earlier, get in, get out. There is a formula for winning the fight, although I think logic says you have to make Canelo the favorite, probably the bigger punch, because there's a big weight difference. But, when Terrence has sincere, mean-spirited motivation, and he's capable of that, he is in there to do damage. And I don't care how big you are, Terrence Crawford is a package. So those are among my favorites. You can't ignore the brilliance of Alexander Usyk and everything he's accomplished. A heavyweight who is a small heavyweight in the era of gigantic heavyweights, and has beaten most of them to clear out the top of the division for himself. He's a remarkable guy. When Lomachenko was trained and at his peak, it was amazing to watch that kind of craft and footwork in the ring. Again, I stay away from unique, but who did I ever see who had the same level of craft and footwork as Lomachenko? I can't name that person. So, the bottom line is I love all fighters. Manny Pacquiao is going to fight again. I love Manny Pacquiao. Do I love the fact that he's going back into the ring at 46? No, I don't love that. I don't think that's a really great idea for him. And I hope he does not dent or diminish his acquired dignity in any way. He's a major global hero, and I want to see him stay a major global hero. So I could talk all day. You asked me to talk about fighters, I can talk all day about which ones I like. I like Tank Davis. I like the counterpunching style. I wish he had found a way to do more against Lamont Roach, but it was, for some reason, the wrong matchup for him. And the matchup seemed to more favor Lamont Roach. So you never know. You never know how styles are going to combine until you see the two guys in the ring. You watch a round or two, then maybe you can get an impression. But if they've never fought before, you never really know.
What's your thoughts on Jaron Ennis?
What's that?
What's your thoughts on Boots Ennis, Jaron Ennis?
On what?
Boots Ennis, Jaron Ennis.
Boots Ennis, big punching welterweight. Might wind up pretty soon at 154 all the time. Big body, big muscles, big punch. Well trained by his dad. Boots Ennis has a chance for a really great dominant future. Let's see him in the big fights. Let's see him, if Crawford gets past Canelo, let's see Boots Ennis against Crawford,
I
right?
would love to see that.
Would love to see that.
I would love to see that.
I know. You guys are Philly guys, right?
Yeah, definitely,
Philly
definitely.
Boots?
Big,
Boots
yeah,
Philly?
yeah. They're good friends of ours. Him and his dad, great people, man. Great,
Well,
great.
I was very close friends with his late manager, Cameron Duncan.
There you go.
Cameron Duncan managed the early portion of his career. And
His career.
I was a huge Cameron Duncan fan and tried to learn as much as I could about all of his fighters, including Boots. And Cameron, before he died, said to me, I believe Boots will beat Terrence Crawford when they meet. We'll see what Terrence has to say about that.
Yeah, I'm a big Terrence Crawford fan as well, but I think this is his defining fight. I would like to see it if he wins against Canelo. I would like to see him ride into the sunset and say, this is the way I did it.
That would be fantastic. But fighters fight, okay?
Definitely, definitely.
He's been fighting since he was a teenager, and it's the life he knows. And once you decide on retirement, then people aren't going to treat you the same on the street anymore, and they're not going to treat you the same in the grocery store anymore. And you have to get used to that. I mean, I had 6 years of not calling fights. I had to get used to the fact that I went to the grocery store and nobody said anything anymore. So it's okay. I'm pretty old. I can live with that, and I could live with not doing it again. But I'm sure hoping that Nick Khan and Dana White and Turkey LLC, all the people who are involved in this big upcoming fight, lean toward the idea of, hey, how about JL one more time? Huh?
There you go.
We'll see.
And what do you think about Turkey's message out there? He doesn't want to see any more Tom and Jerry acts. I don't know if you saw that message.
Doesn't like to see what?
He doesn't want to see any more Tom and Jerry running around the ring type thing. He wants to see the best fighters fight each other.
And I appreciate that he says it. But work with your matchmakers, work with your staff, work with the people who are working with you, and do your best to make certain that you have ignition. Attacker against attacker, sure thing. Gaddy Ward, you don't have to sell that. That's going to sell itself. Attacker against a counterpuncher can work. Depends on whether the counterpuncher has more skills or whether the puncher has a way to detonate. Obviously, Marquez versus Pacquiao worked. And so you can find a way to make that match and see great combustion. Two skilled boxers against each other. That's for an audience of sophisticated tastes. That's, something that plays to the legitimate boxing sophisticate. You can put two stylists in and put Larry Merchant at ringside. You're good to go. But there are a lot of other commentators who just don't get it and aren't going to be able to turn that into entertainment.
I'm glad you mentioned matchmaking. A good friend of mine, Aaron Ford, he's a trainer. He actually trains Joseph Brown, who I talked to you about earlier, out of Canada. Aaron Ford, he works with Bozy Ennis and the Bozy Ennis camp. And so he has experience in matchmaking. And me, I never, of course, you get two fighters together, they fight. I never knew the science behind matchmaking until I spoke to him. And
what made Top Rank the number one promoter for such a long period of time? Bruce Trampler, Brad Goodman, the best two matchmakers who ever worked for one promoter for an extended period of time. Two guys who absolutely understood, as well as anybody could understand, what kind of fight would be entertaining. So as long as Top Rank had Trampler and Goodman, they had the formula for understanding how to put entertainment in the ring. And it served them well for a long, long time. We need other matchmakers of that ilk to come along. We need a generation of matchmakers who go back and study what Trampler and Goodman did at Top Rank and how they came about their understanding of what was good. Terrence Crawford was a substitute opponent on a pay-per-view card in Las Vegas against a South American fighter named Bradis Prescott. Prescott was unbeaten, expected to have tremendous upward mobility in what I believe at that moment was the 135-pound weight class, lightweight. And Tim Bradley had seen our boy Crawford training in somebody else's camp. And Bradley, I forget who it was that Crawford was sparring with. And Bradley told the Top Rank matchmakers, if you put him in against Prescott, he'll beat him. And sure enough, Terrence Crawford beat Bradis Prescott and launched a big career in the fight in which Prescott was the favorite. And I established as such in the first round. Bradis Prescott is seen as a blue chip prospect who's rise to championship level, and not much is known about Terrence Crawford. Crawford undressed him, won the fight, and went on to become Terrence Crawford. Now we'll see what he does against Canelo Alvarez. Matchmaking is the critical component in making careers in boxing. Why? Styles make fights. Simple as that. Styles make fights, and you've got to observe that and pay attention to it if you're going to entertain the audience.
Definitely.
There you go.
Well
there
said.
You go.
So, Jim,
well said.
I couldn't let you get out of here without talking about, you've done this for so long, and I would like you to tell somebody that wants to have a journey like yours in broadcasting and doing the things that you do all over the aspects, going from one network to the other. Them trying to phase you out into boxing and excelling in it. You excelled in it and made a staple in it. What would you tell somebody that tries to have a career like yours or has some ups and downs in the career? I can't let you get away without saying on that in your career.
Whether you're a blow-by-blow commentator or an expert commentator, whichever role you want to function in communicating with the public, whether you're a sports writer or an editorialist, et cetera, at the end of the day, everything we do is about two things. One is passion. You'll never achieve anything in bringing stories off the page if you cannot approach them with passion. My mother told me stories all of my upbringing after my father died when I was 5 years old. And she told those stories with passion and with devotion. She wanted to make them interesting. She wanted to help me understand Sugar Ray Robinson, who was a tremendous hero to her. So point one is passion. Point two is language skills. People here in Chapel Hill at the University of North Carolina, where I live, communication students come to me and say they want to be, great communicators, broadcasters, sports writers. And I say to them what they don't want to hear was, do you have perfect grammar? Do you have an extensive vocabulary? Do you understand the literal meaning and the nuance of every single word that you might wind up using? Well, look, I'm good enough. Well, good enough is not good enough. You have to be great. And that's what sets great reporters apart. Larry Merchant, Max Kellerman, Roy Jones, passion, language, every single one of them. They have something they want to say because of their passion, and they know how to say it because they have language skills. Expand your vocabulary. Learn a different word every day. And above and beyond that, don't ever lose your passion for whatever sport you're covering, whether it's boxing or tiddlywinks or anything in between. The great baseball reporters, they live, eat, and breathe baseball. The great football reporters, same thing. The great boxing reporters, they are devoted to our sport, my sport, boxing, face-to-face narratives, and legacies among human beings who are as decent, honorable, devoted, and good as any human beings in the world. That's my take.
Well
Great.
said. And I know you mentioned
Well
UNC there. I know you're UNC, a North Carolina guy. Are you happy with Bill Belichick coaching the team?
I don't know. I'm waiting to see what happens. I think that it's open to question. I'm 76. Bill is 73. Would I want to go out and try to recruit 40 new roster fillers for every year? Would I want all of the work that's involved in that? I'm not sure. I mean, I know that Belichick is a fabulous technician and that he's as good as anyone in the film room. But college coaching involves a high level of get on the plane, get into the car, go to someone's home, sit in the living room, sell the case, search, keep looking at film, keep evaluating people. Don't rely on anybody else to form your final opinion. Be the one who does that yourself. I think that's an awfully big challenge for a 73-year-old guy. I'm not sure Bill Belichick at this point. I will always say this. I went to his last Super Bowl win with the Patriots, which was the game in Glendale, Arizona, where he and the Patriots beat the Seattle Seahawks. And they won the game because the Seahawks drove the length of the field at the end with Russell Wilson at quarterback and had a chance to win if they could score from the 1-yard line. And just prior to the play they ran from the 1-yard line, a reserve defensive back named Malcolm Butler, who was in the game only because of an injury, walked over to another much more experienced defensive back and whispered into the ear hole of his helmet. What did he tell him? He told him that from the formation, he could see what the play was going to be, and that if they switched their assignments, they would stuff the play because the play called for the wide receivers to switch past each other and be open because one defensive back or another was going to collide with something and not be there to cover. That if they switched their assignments, they would stuff that and there wouldn't be anybody for Wilson to throw to. It happened, okay? And later on, a very knowledgeable pro football source, Harry Carson, linebacker on 2 Super Bowl championship teams with the Giants. I mentioned all that to him. And he said, Jim, I want to tell you one thing. That would only happen in one coaching staff in the NFL. There is only one NFL coaching staff where exactly that would have happened, where somebody could have been so well-versed from film study, even though he was a reserve player, stepping in for an injured player, that he would have the authority to go to a veteran player and whisper into his ear hole and change the assignment because of what he saw in the formation. I don't think that would happen anywhere else. That happens with Belichick because that's the most squared away coaching staff in the league. So I'm not here to tell you that he can't succeed. I'm here to tell you that at 73, he's going to have to work in a way that he's never worked before. And I hope he's ready because I want the Tar Heels to win. But I saw what happened with the last geriatric coach here, my very dear friend, Mac Brown. And I don't think Mac Brown was still adept at 75 or 76 in the way that he was when he was 63 or 64. I hope that Belichick can defy that paradigm and win games for the Tar Heels. If he doesn't, the problem isn't going to be his girlfriend. The problem is going to be the mountain of work that's involved in college coaching.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
And also the fact that Clemson is in your league. There's that
part. Dabo Sweeney. Yeah,
that's
exactly right. Dabo Sweeney, who could really coach.
Sooly, any final thoughts for Jim? All right.
There goes Sooly.
Yeah, somebody must have called his phone.
We lost him, Blake.
No, he'll be back in a second. Somebody probably called his phone. Jim, you want to promote everything that you got? Of course, your book, your social media. I know you talk about you don't like social media, but
The book is titled "It Happened." The call came from my call of Foreman's knockout of Moore. The social media, I think I mentioned to you earlier. You can probably at this point Google Jim Lampley, and you'll find some path to it, or Google "It Happened," and that might direct you. My wife did all of the traffic on this, so she's the authority, and she's not here to help me right now, but shouldn't be that difficult to find the book and a way to buy it. You can buy it right off my website. 30 scoots, not that bad a price. A lot of great stories, many of them about boxing. Enjoy.
definitely, and I'll make sure to put it all in the description box so you guys can find it. So you can just click on it and go to it. I'll take care of all that for Jim. I can do that for a legend. I'd be happy to do that for a legend. Jim, I appreciate having you on here and sharing these stories. I mean, it wasn't been an hour. It doesn't feel like it. Just sharing all these stories, the legendary work you've done. I know, and I'll speak for Sue. We love having you, loving hearing all of these, because a lot of things that you say and resonate, we've talked about several times when we talk to these boxers all over. And I can't say, without saying 1,000 times, we appreciate what you bring to the game, what you bring to television, what you bring. And I hope you can keep bringing that. If the Lord willing, they let you keep doing it.
God take care of Emmanuel Stewart. Take care of all crunk fighters. That's where I'm an alumnus. And thank you, Philadelphia, for being the #1 fight town in the United States. Even, don't tell my Detroit friends, even more so than Detroit. All right. Thank you, Philly.
Thank you. So you got back. You guys got back, man. I wanted to give you your final thoughts. Jim gave us his.
Hey, Jim, it was great talking to you, man. Great listening to your book. Great piece that you did. I know you dedicated the book to, and you spoke on your mother, Miss Peggy Lampley, your grandmother, Miss Mildred Lampley. Rest in peace. We want to thank them too for giving you the ability to tell these stories, man, and I liked how you mentioned, these people that's been in your lives that have helped shape you. And like I said, I know how important this was, with your mother and your grandmother. Just a great piece. Great to hear your voice again, man. We hope to continue to hear it. We hope that Mr. Turkey over there and his crew and all them could come together and continue the ball rolling. I'm going to keep saying it. But it's been a pleasure, man. And I'm glad. And it's been an honor speaking to you, man. One of my childhood favorites, man. And just like Ali was in boxing and Marvin Hagler was in boxing, you're definitely one of them in broadcasting. So, man,
the #1 elevator fight. Who was the real winner of Hagler-Leonard, right? Yeah.
There you go.
Right, thank you, Sooly. And thank you, Blake. I've really, really enjoyed this. We're over an hour, and I'm glad that I have the time to spend with you. I'll look forward to next time somewhere down the road, and keep telling your listeners that they can find a way on the web to acquire and buy It Happened.
Listen, we're going to give away two books now.
Really?
We want
to, and I can tell that you've read it. Because you hit the most important thing, which is my mother and my grandmother. I grew up in the South, and I'm sure you both know that mothers rule the South.
Yes.
And so
as did I.
My grandmother are huge, and it was my mother who sat me down to watch her favorite fighter, Sugar Ray Robinson, 1955, against Bo Bulls for the middleweight championship of the world. And from that moment on, it was me and boxing and me. Thank you very much.
Go. Well, we're going to give away two books of yours. If you could be more than gracious enough to sign them for us, we'll give them away to our viewers. We just want to maybe do a little trivia on you.
Send them here. I'll sign them.
There you go.
You have the address, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. We spoke to your wife, so we have everything, and we'll do that, man. But it's great catching up with you, man. Thank you again. We could talk all day about boxing, but you know we got to come to an end at some time. But thank you, man. We'll catch up.
Sometime. Thank you both. Love you desperately. Look forward to next time. All right.
Definitely.
Oh, definitely. And
All right,
we'll wrap this. And we'll wrap this up. I'm Blake Anthony. This is Sooly, and this is the Jim Lampley. And we'll end this as we always do. It's not how hard as you can hit; it is hard as you can get hit. And we'll see you guys next time. James Tony, take us home.
Yo, this is James Lights Out Tony, the one and only. You are tuning into Philly Fight World. You see me?